Every now and then comes a spate of films all based on the work of the hottest author of the day. Once upon a time it was, say, Ernest Hemingway, another time it was Stephen King, and then another Stephenie Meyer. Well, during the 1990s, the star of the literary hour was legal thriller maestro John Grisham. The likes of The Client, A Time to Kill, and The Rainmaker were some of the most well-known adaptations of his material, and even his unfinished works like The Gingerbread Man were turned into films by directors like Robert Altman. In fact, so lucrative was Grisham's success that Universal even optioned one of his books for a film before it was even actually finished. And they even tried to get Ron Howard to direct, though he ultimately ended up settling for a producer role. Enter today's defendant. Based on the novel of the same name, The Chamber focuses on hotshot young lawyer Adam, who must defend his racist KK grandfather, Sam, from the long-standing death sentence for the supposed bombing of a Jewish legal firm many years ago. However, despite his grandfather's rather vehement protests and general nastiness, Adam not only believes him innocent of the crime, but also suspects something much bigger and darker is at work here, and something that goes back well into a very unpleasant past. It's in these interactions between Sam and Adam that the film feels at its most sharp, as despite their disdain, they do gradually grow closer to each other over the course of the film as they both face less than pleasant aspects about their family history. O'Donnell's optimism and chipper attitude against Hackman's bitterness and lack of really any political correctness work well off each other, walking that line between a degree of affection and tension brought about by their very different and contrasting worldviews, and the two do have enough chemistry to really pull it off. When that's not the focus, however, is when the film feels like a lot of hot air, which is kind of fitting considering the title. Despite some tight and tense direction from veteran filmmaker James Foley and Hackman's usual stellar work as a despicable Klansman, The Chamber just doesn't amount to much. It spends so much of its runtime ballyhooing this big uncovering of these secrets that could rock the Mississippi political boat, alluding to all sorts of threads that are just never explored, including possible corruption, political backstabbing, and racial tensions that run back generations, instead of tightening it up and focusing the story more on a man coming to terms with his family's dark past and their legacy. Here's just one such example of this really shambly juggling act. There's a whole chunk of the narrative devoted to a local KKK leader, played by everyone's favorite 90s bad guy, Raymond J. Barry, that seems to imply him having some sort of influential power in the community, and characters everywhere love going on about how Adam doesn't want to go digging into this or into him, but in the end, not to spoil anything, he and frankly that whole thread don't amount to much of anything. So what was the point of wasting all this time making him seem like this big powerful threat when he kinda wasn't? Indeed, any thread related to possible discussion of the still strong racial tensions among groups in the South of the time is little more than glorified filler, something to go between the much better scenes of Sam and Adam, which is a real pity. I suspect the combination of replacing William, All the President's Men, and Princess Bride Goldman with, well, comedy scribe Phil Alden Robinson, credited as Chris Reese here, during the writing, as well as adapting the novel before Grisham actually finished it, had something to do with how choppy this narrative feels. How any writer worth their salt could not see the massive amount of time that was being wasted on stuff that just doesn't go anywhere, and ends up taking away from what the film should be focusing on, is just beyond me. Even when it tries to go back into the family's past, it isn't all that compelling because it comes off as just a lot of exposition dumping rather than something that feels organically necessary to the story. It's very muddled, and it just feels like there wasn't much of a sense of what to do with this story. At the very least, though, the film is honestly never boring. Thanks to our really seasoned cast, even a latter years Faye Dunaway here as a Southern Belle isn't too bad, honestly, and she does get a couple of okay chuckles out, and Foley handles the generational tension with a very short hand, but dramatically, it just feels every bit as light as the gases in the titular room, and much of it just comes off as wasteful, doddering, and ploddy. Unless you're a die-hard John Grisham fan, just stick to reading the book or watch another adaptation of his material, as there are so many out there that are just better than this is.